Today we're talking about strategies for starting a record collection on the cheap. We're talking about YouTube, influencers, and tons more on this episode of Ask Me Anything. Hi, my name is Frank. Welcome back to Channel 33 RPM, your channel for vinyl, gear, and more. I wanted to get in one more episode of Ask Me Anything before we say farewell to 2020. So I got a handful of cool questions today, including the big one. This is one I've wanted to tackle for a while, and that's sharing tips for starting a record collection on the cheap. Can it still be done? Sorta. Kinda. Let's get at it.
Dear 33ers, remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. A thumbs up also helps this channel continue to grow. I appreciate your support.
All right. Well, this first question comes from Ryan. And Ryan writes, "Hi Frank, hope you're doing well. I'm sort of new to the vinyl community, so any ideas on how to build my collection for relatively cheap? Thanks." All right, Ryan. Well, I got good news for you, my friend, and I got bad news. The good news is you can still build a record collection on the cheap, on a budget. However, it's not as easy as it was. Like 10 years ago, man, it was a lot easier. But I don't want to discourage you. I don't want to discourage people who are new to record collecting. So yeah, sure, it can be done. Let me give you some strategies that I have used and that I continue to use. Number one, hit thrift stores. Hit thrift stores as often as you can. And when you hit thrift stores, don't get discouraged. Go there, check out the records, check out the audio gear, check out the CDs, and check out the tapes. But you're talking vinyl, so let's talk about vinyl first. You're going to go once, you're going to find absolutely nothing. You're going to go twice, you're going to find worse than nothing. You're going to go the third time, you're going to find a bunch of Nana Muscuri records. But you can go, your fourth or fifth or sixth time, eventually you're going to find something good. And that's the key to hitting the thrift stores. You have to have patience, a lot of patience. You have to go regularly. Back when I used to hit the thrifts often, I used to go like 3-4 times a week on my lunch break because I worked not far from a Valley Village. So that is the key. Be persistent and be patient. And when you're there, don't just check out the records, check out the audio gear. I found so much cool stuff at the thrift stores for cheap. I found record players, I have found receivers, that sort of stuff. Check out the CDs. CDs are the best value in pre-recorded music right now. People are practically giving those away. And check out the tapes too, if you happen to be into that. Number two, so check out the thrifts. Garage sales, yard sales, as they call them across the pond, boot sales, I believe. Check out all that sort of stuff. Again, it's not as easy as it was 5 or 10 years ago. People are, one, realizing the value of the records they have, and two, sometimes getting ridiculous ideas as to how much they think those records are actually worth. So again, be patient. You're driving by a garage sale, driving by a yard sale, hop in and see what they're selling. You might find something. Or if you're out there and the person holding the sale is saying anything in particular you're looking for, tell them what you're looking for. I'm always honest. There's things I'm looking for when I go to garage sales. I'm looking for music, like records, tapes, and CDs. I'm looking for vintage advertising. I love that sort of stuff, old beer signs and stuff like that, and vintage and classic electronics, whether it's record players, whether it's receivers, or whether it's old video games. I love all that stuff. So remember, hit the garage sales, hit the yard sales, but again, practice those same things we talked about earlier. Go often and be patient, because most of the time you ain't going to find nothing. Use the local online classifieds as well to your advantage. This is the good thing about living now in the internet age, right? Like back in the day, you have to place a classified ad in the free weekly buy and sell paper or whatnot, or look at those ads. Nowadays, you can place ads and look at ads for absolutely nothing, whether it's Craigslist. Here in Canada, Kijiji is popular, and Facebook Marketplace. I'm finding that one to be one of my favorite forums lately, just because I can research the seller or the buyer. I can click on their names. I can see who this person is, and I can kind of figure out kind of beforehand what I'm dealing with. So see what people are selling in your area, number one, and post an ad. Say that you are looking to buy records or record collections and list the genres you're into, because you never know who will respond. I mean, that portion also has gotten more difficult, but even 5 years ago, I was placing these ads and people would call me up and I'd go buy a box of like 200 records. Haven't done that in a while, but still possible. So use the online classifieds. What else? When you're in the record stores, check out the dollar bins and the discount bins. Don't discount the discount bins. I found stuff in there. I mean, it's not often or rarely will you find like this $50 super rare ultra record in the dollar bin, because most of the time the record store owner, rightfully so, is going to know what they're selling. However, you might find some other cool stuff in there to maybe fill gaps in your collection, to use as a starting point, or to use as a placeholder until you find a better copy of that album. So remember to check the dollar bins and the discount bins. And finally, this is a strategy that I use for purchasing new vinyl off of Amazon in particular. There is a website you can go to called Camel, as funny as that sounds, Camel. And this is basically a price tracking website. Now, I'm not paid to talk about these guys. I've sincerely found this useful. You find a product or any product you want on Amazon, but today we're talking records, and you copy that URL and you paste it into Camel, and generally it will give you a price history of that album, the lowest it's sold for and the highest it's sold for. And you can also create an alert. So say you're looking for the new whatever, a Beastie Boys album, you can write your ideal price and set up an alert. So when that Beastie Boys album hits the price you want it, hits that threshold, the Camel website, program, whatever, will ping you. It'll send you a message on social media, or it'll send you an email. So I use that quite often, and it works. I tend to get records for the price I want them to sometimes, because prices on Amazon fluctuate quite a bit. So Ryan, hope these tips and strategies help you out and get you started in this vinyl hobby, and welcome, man. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, this next question comes from Raymond, and Raymond says, Frank, do you consider yourself an influencer like so many people on YouTube these days? I gotta tell you, I dislike using the label influencer. It's not me. When I think of a YouTube influencer or a social media influencer, you get this sort of image in your mind of someone sort of attracted to like the fame of it, if that's the right word, and maybe out to get stuff and self-promote. That said, obviously I recognize the impact, I guess, or the role, not the role, but I guess the impact that channels like Channel 33 RPM do play in that respect. And I say this with modesty, and again, don't like the label. I mean, this channel obviously does have some influence. So does that make me an influencer? I don't know. But just that whole label, that whole culture of social media and YouTube influencers is not for me. No disrespect to others who revel in that or like it and really appreciate that sort of title. Just a dude with a camera and a computer who talks music, and some people dig it. So hope I answered your question, but social influencer, YouTube influencer, nah. So next question, I'm going to mess this up. I think it comes from Warasal Rawan. I don't know. Anyway, he says, what's the best sounding record in your collection? I've mentioned this before, and I've heard multiple copies of this, and it always sounds phenomenal, and that is David Bowie's Let's Dance. If you get yourself an early Canadian press, it sounds fantastic. I haven't heard early presses from other countries. I'm assuming they also sound fantastic, but man, that album is just so well produced and sounds so huge. And I've compared various CD pressings to that original vinyl, the 80s pressings of that album, and they pale in comparison. So easily best sounding record in my collection. All right, Metal Mickey, Mike, he writes, what do you think of putting ornaments or such on top of speakers? Do you think people would consider that a bad idea? How do I answer this question? I used to have, like, I've taken them down now, but I had some ornamental skulls on my speakers, and I dug them, and I just moved them recently because when you pump your speakers really loud, they vibrate, and one of my wooden skulls fell off. I'm like, I don't want to damage those. I got them in Mexico and I dig them, so I took them off. But I stored things on top of my speakers. I got a water bottle, I got a pair of glasses, I got light there. I don't think it impacts the sound at all. Again, the only issue I see with storing things on top of your speakers is vibrations. You crank the music, they start to bounce, your stuff falls off, it can break, and no one wants to see that. So, hope that answers your question, Mike. Cheers, man. Kenneth writes, do you collect Elvis Presley albums? What's your opinion on him? So I gotta tell you, growing up, Elvis and the Beatles, but particularly Elvis, was my mom's favorite artist, and she had a ton of his records. So at any given time, there was Elvis blasting off the family's home stereo console. So I grew up, that was ingrained. Elvis was in my blood, in my veins in that sense. But personally, I was never a huge Elvis fan until 2000, until the year 2000. And that year, my friend Chris and I hopped in my little 3-cylinder Geo Metro, and we drove from Winnipeg, Canada, straight south. We had some idea where we were going, but not a huge idea of where we were going. And that's the great thing about how old were we? 2000, like 27, 26, whatever. Anyway, we ended up in Memphis, and of course we went to Graceland, and it was quite the experience. I loved it. I mean, it's like, my first thought of Graceland was the house was smaller than I thought it would be. I don't know why. I mean, you think you get something in your head and you picture this huge place, and I got to Graceland. It wasn't quite as large as I thought it was. I mean, touring that place and seeing Elvis's grave and just, his cars and this plane and all that. I don't know. I don't want to say it spoke to me, but I guess it kind of did. Then went to Sun Studios, did that whole Memphis thing on that road trip. Anyway, I really started digging Elvis myself after that. I don't have a huge Elvis collection. I mean, I love his Christmas stuff, his early stuff, his live stuff. Man, there's a bunch of Elvis stuff I like. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard fan or I know everything about the guy, but I definitely dig his music. And again, it goes back to my mom in that, now I call it a pilgrimage, and that pilgrimage we did down to Memphis back in 2000. So yes, I do dig Elvis. And this question from Zach, can you talk about RSD scalpers, record store day scalpers? I'm so fed up at this point with them flipping an album that would be 30 to 35 to over $100. It makes RSD look more like a money grab at this point. Man, I've talked about this before, and obviously I'm not a fan of scalpers. However, and I'm not a scalper, however, I'm not sure if we can blame Record Store Day. I think we have, in many respects, ourselves to blame. I'm using the ourselves, not me, not necessarily you, but people who buy records from scalpers, which I haven't done. I refuse to pay ridiculous prices for a Record Store Day record and support that. But really, can you blame the scalpers, or can you blame the people paying the ridiculous, overinflated prices? I think it's option B. I mean, people are so dead set on getting a particular record, they're willing to pay 3 times the retail cost of it. Well, in that case, why wouldn't someone flip that record? So I can't necessarily blame the flippers. They're seeing a demand. They're meeting that demand. I kind of can't let the record collector off the hook who is supporting that flipper. I mean, it's not going to stop until we stop supporting those kind of people. So sure, it sucks. No one wants to see it. I've kind of learned to suck it up, and if I don't get an album on Record Store Day, I will continue to check Discogs and whatnot, and occasionally you will find that record still going for regular retail. But as Zach said here, oftentimes you're seeing a $35 record selling for over $100. At that point, I just wash my hands and walk away. Because if we don't do that, dear 33ers, we're going to keep seeing more of those ridiculous sort of prices. All right, that is today's AMA, the last one of 2020. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. I'd love if you weighed in with some of your responses as well. We can have a conversation in the comments below. Remember, if you dug this video, I'd appreciate a quick thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Dear 33ers, I hope each and every one of you has a fantastic week. Until next time, keep on spinning.